The marble floor of Sheikh Khalil Al-Mansouri's private study reflected emergency lights like fractured stars, each beam catching droplets of crimson that had spread across hand-woven Persian rugs. 3 bodies lay in positions that spoke of violence. Overturned crystal tumblers leaked amber whiskey into pools of blood, while a Philippine passport lay open near the mahogany desk. Yasmin Dela Rosa's official portrait capturing innocence that would never survive what followed. Security cameras hung like dead eyes, their recording lights extinguished by someone who understood that certain truths were too dangerous to preserve. 6 months earlier, Yasmin pressed her face against the airplane window as Dubai's impossible skyline emerged from desert heat. The city below glittered with promises of transformation, each tower representing escape from suffocating poverty that had defined her 26 years. The marriage broker's promises echoed with each mile gained. Sheikh Khalil Al-Mansouri was wealthy beyond imagination, traditionally minded but kind, seeking a wife who would appreciate stability over passion. Khalil's assessment of his prospective bride took place in the Burj Al Arab's royal suite. He examined her with careful attention applied to acquiring rare antiquities, noting her bone structure, intelligence behind nervous smiles, how she carried herself despite unfamiliar surroundings. His questions evaluated rather than discovered, treating responses like specifications rather than insights into a human soul. Marriage is partnership with defined roles, he explained, English accent refined by international education. I provide security and status. You provide stability and discretion. Romantic notions complicate straightforward business. The ring he placed on her finger was magnificent, diamonds and sapphires in traditional Islamic patterns, but its weight felt like shackles. She told herself love could grow from respect, that security was more valuable than passion, that survival sometimes required accepting terms dignity would reject. The wedding ceremony showcased everything Khalil valued about presentation and control. Traditional Emirati musicians filled Emirates Palace Hotel, while hundreds witnessed the union of old money and selected beauty. Yasmin wore a dress costing more than her father's annual income, each pearl hand-sewn by artisans specializing in perfection for those wealthy enough to demand it. Among the wedding party stood Tariq Hassan, Khalil's childhood friend whose Lebanese-Canadian heritage made him simultaneously insider and outsider in Dubai's social hierarchy. His investment banking sophistication contrasted with Khalil's traditional values, creating dynamics where only Tariq could challenge decisions without consequences. During ceremony, his eyes found Yasmin's with increasing frequency, recognizing something in her composure that spoke of dreams being buried alive. The crack appeared during reception when Yasmin disappeared for 20 minutes. Tariq found her on a service balcony, wedding dress intact, crying silently while Dubai's lights spread below. Her tears weren't joy but realization that she had signed away freedom for security she wasn't certain she'd ever feel. Marriage can be overwhelming, he offered carefully. Can it? She replied in precise English. Or only when you realize you've become someone's investment rather than choice? That conversation lasted minutes but established connection more dangerous than either anticipated. While Khalil worked reception with practiced charm, his wife and best friend shared authentic moments his money couldn't purchase and control couldn't prevent. The Al-Mansouri mansion revealed itself as architectural imprisonment disguised as luxury. 37 rooms required full-time staff of 12, each space showcasing wealth while ensuring privacy. Yasmin's new home contained every comfort, marble bathrooms with gold fixtures, walk-in closets with designer clothes, private spa with treatments costing more per session than most monthly earnings. But comfort and freedom were different currencies. Her passport disappeared into Khalil's study safe for security. Phone calls home became scheduled events supervised by bilingual staff. Movements beyond mansion required driver approval and security clearance. Social interactions limited to pre-approved wives who treated her with polite distance reserved for expensive acquisitions unproven in worth. The locked second-floor room became obsession during her first month. Staff deflected questions with practiced evasion while Khalil's explanations changed. Sometimes storage, sometimes business documents, sometimes simply stating certain areas remained private regardless of marriage certificates. Curiosity overcame caution. The room contained belongings of Khalil's first wife, British woman named Catherine who died in car accident 3 years earlier. Photographs showed blonde woman with increasingly hollow eyes as marriage progressed. Personal journals hidden beneath silk scarves revealed familiar stories of isolation, control, dreams suffocating under golden chains. The final entry, dated 2 weeks before Catherine's death, contained warning across time. He doesn't want a wife. He wants beautiful possession that speaks when spoken to, remains silent otherwise. The accident won't be accident. Nothing here ever is. Wedding night arrived with ceremony of business transaction finalization. Khalil approached intimacy with methodical precision applied to merger negotiations, treating Yasmin's like legally acquired property rather than chosen love. Touches were possessive rather than passionate. Words focused on biological functions rather than emotional connection. Satisfaction derived from ownership rather than mutual pleasure. Lying beneath silk sheets costing more than most wedding dresses, Yasmin stared at ceiling frescoes depicting paradise while understanding she had purchased family financial security by selling herself into beautifully appointed prison. The ring caught moonlight through bulletproof windows, brilliance mocking darkness settling over her heart. Outside, Dubai's eternal construction continued, cranes reshaping sand into monuments to human ambition. Inside mansion, 3 people had been set on collision course, transforming carefully constructed lives into ruins more complete than any demolition could achieve. The question was whether love or survival would prove more destructive when both demands could no longer be satisfied by same choices. 2 months into marriage, Yasmin's days followed patterns designed by others. Morning shopping excursions with assigned drivers who reported destinations and purchases. Supervised phone calls to Manila every Tuesday and Friday. Conversations monitored by staff fluent in Tagalog. Charitable galas where she stood beside Khalil like expensive jewelry, smiling for photographers while her soul withered behind designer dresses that cost more than her family's annual income. The depression crept in gradually, disguised as adjustment difficulties until sleepless nights became routine and meals turned tasteless despite being prepared by world-class chefs. Her attempts to connect with Filipino domestic workers in neighboring mansions were quickly discovered and forbidden. "You're not staff," Khalil explained with clinical detachment. "Socializing beneath your station reflects poorly on our family's reputation." Tariq's business visits became the only interruptions to suffocating routine. As Khalil's investment partner in expanding their construction empire into renewable energy projects, he appeared weekly for strategy sessions that often extended into evening discussions. His presence brought oxygen into airless spaces, conversations that acknowledged her existence beyond ornamental purposes. The Dubai Museum of the Future Charity Gala showcased everything Yasmin had learned to despise about her new world. Women draped in couture competed over who could appear most philanthropic while discussing nothing more substantial than vacation plans and plastic surgery recommendations. She stood alone near contemporary art installations, ornamental in midnight blue Valentino, watching guests perform generosity for photographers. "You look like you're at a funeral, not a celebration," Tariq observed, approaching with champagne flutes that caught gallery lighting like liquid gold. "Perhaps I am," she replied, her perfect English surprising him with its bitter precision. "Mourning who I used to be before becoming decorative object number 7 in Khalil's collection." Their first real conversation lasted 47 minutes. Art led to dreams, dreams to abandoned nursing aspirations, aspirations to philosophical discussions about freedom's true cost. Across the gallery, Khalil's eyes found them repeatedly, cataloging the animation in his wife's face that had been absent since their wedding night. During Khalil's business trips to expand operations in Oman and Qatar, Tariq began arriving with small gifts that spoke of genuine attention. Filipino novels by Jessica Hagedorn and Carlos Bulosan, music from Ben and December Avenue that reminded her of rainy Manila afternoons, books about Middle Eastern history that helped her understand the region beyond its gleaming surface. "You're homesick for a place that exists between cultures," he observed during one afternoon conversation in the mansion's library. "Not quite Filipino anymore, definitely not Emirati, but something new that doesn't have a name yet." His Lebanese-Canadian background created understanding bridges that pure Emirati or Western perspectives couldn't provide. Born in Beirut, educated in Toronto, working in Dubai, he navigated cultural complexity with ease that made Yasmin's displacement feel less like personal failure and more like shared experience. They were both outsiders in Emirates' high society, tolerated for their usefulness but never fully accepted. The thunderstorm arrived during Tariq's August business visit, desert rain hammering bulletproof windows with unusual intensity. Power outages were rare in Dubai's most exclusive neighborhood, but infrastructure occasionally surrendered to nature's fury. Yasmin found him working by phone flashlight in Khalil's study, spreadsheets and contracts scattered across mahogany surfaces. "Generator should restore power soon," she said, setting battery-powered lanterns on his workspace. "Staff is checking circuit breakers." Their conversation drifted from business to loneliness, loneliness to isolation, isolation to the fundamental human need for genuine connection. When his hand accidentally touched hers while reaching for documents, neither pulled away. The almost kiss was interrupted by lights flooding back to life, but something irreversible had shifted between them. Khalil's absences increased as his renewable energy investments demanded personal oversight across the Gulf. Solar farms in Saudi Arabia, wind projects in Kuwait, geothermal exploration in Oman. Opportunities that required weeks away from Dubai and wives who asked too many questions about delayed returns. These trips created space for conversations that evolved from careful courtesy to emotional intimacy. Yasmin's discovery of birth control pills in Catherine's hidden journal pages revealed another layer of her predecessor's experience. Detailed entries described Khalil's systematic prevention of pregnancy, his fear that children would create complications in marriages designed for convenience rather than continuation. The pills, still months from expiration, suggested Catherine's death had interrupted rather than concluded family planning discussions. Secret messaging began through encrypted signal conversations, seemingly business-related exchanges that contained emotional subtext visible only to participants. Shared photographs of sunset views from their respective locations, philosophical discussions about freedom's true meaning, late-night conversations that stretched until dawn prayers echoed from neighborhood mosques. Social events became elaborate performances where attraction had to be disguised as professional courtesy. The Al Habtoor Polo Resort charity tournament required them to maintain appropriate distance while standing meters apart, pretending indifference while hyper-aware of each other's every movement. Security personnel trained to notice unusual behavior began reporting extended conversations and suspicious eye contact patterns. "Your mood has improved recently," Khalil observed during one of his brief returns home. "Are you finally adjusting to Dubai's pace?" The question carried undertones that made Yasmin's pulse quicken with fear rather than excitement. His intelligence was formidable, his observation skills honed by decades of business negotiations where reading people meant profit or loss. Any change in routine triggered analysis that could prove deadly if conclusions pointed toward betrayal. Tariq's protective instincts intensified whenever he witnessed Khalil's casual cruelty disguised as traditional values. Monitoring Yasmin's communications, restricting her movements, treating her like property rather than partner, each controlling behavior triggered guilt about his own role in a system that treated women as acquisitions rather than individuals. The Burj Khalifa's private observation deck on the 148th floor offered views that made Dubai's ambitions seem achievable from sufficient altitude. Tariq had arranged access through business connections, ostensibly to discuss investment opportunities but actually to provide Yasmin with perspective beyond mansion walls. Sunset painted the city in shades of gold and crimson that made even commercial districts look romantic. "What does freedom mean to you?" he asked as Dows traced ancient patterns across Dubai Creek far below. "Choice," she replied without hesitation. "The ability to make decisions about my own life, even bad ones, especially bad ones. You, space between expectation and reality. Room to disappoint people who claim to love you. It happened gradually, inevitably, dangerously." Dubai's skyline provided backdrop that both knew would change everything. When they separated, breathless and terrified, the weight of consequences settled like lead in their stomachs. "You're the only real thing in my life here," Yasmin whispered, fingers still trembling from contact that felt like salvation and damnation simultaneously. "This can't happen again," Tariq replied, though his voice carried no conviction. "Khalil is my brother in everything but blood. I've already betrayed him by wanting what I can never have." Below them, Dubai's lights began their nightly performance, millions of bulbs creating patterns that suggested order while concealing chaos underneath. They had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, started something that could only end in destruction, chosen desire over safety in a world where such choices carried prices measured in blood rather than regret. For months into marriage, Yasmin's world contracted to a single point of focus. Every conversation, every text message, every stolen glance with Tariq became evidence cataloged in mental files that grew thicker with each passing day. She memorized his schedule with forensic precision, timing her mall visits to coincide with his lunch meetings, her charitable appearances to overlap with his social obligations. What had begun as escape from loneliness transformed into systematic campaign of manufactured coincidence. The private beach house in Jumeirah belonged to one of Khalil's business associates, empty during summer months when owners retreated to European estates. Yasmin discovered the security codes through careful observation during a dinner party, information she filed away until Khalil's next international trip provided opportunity. The first afternoon there, she waited 3 hours for Tariq to respond to her carefully crafted emergency message about needing somewhere safe to think. "This is dangerous," he said, finding her on the terrace overlooking private coastline where servants maintained perfection for absent millionaires. "If anyone sees my car here, no one will. I've been watching this place for weeks." The admission slipped out before she could stop it, revealing calculation behind apparent spontaneity. Their physical relationship began that afternoon, not from passion but from Yasmin's methodical erosion of his resistance. She positioned herself as victim seeking comfort, presenting intimacy as healing rather than betrayal. Tariq's guilt about Khalil warred with genuine care for someone clearly drowning in isolation, creating internal conflict that manifested as physical tenderness masking emotional confusion. Afterward, lying on sheets that smelled of expensive detergent rather than human warmth, she asked the question that revealed her true expectations. "When will you tell him about us?" "There is no us," Tariq replied, immediately recognizing his mistake in allowing vulnerability to overcome judgment. This was a mistake that can't happen again. But Yasmin had already begun documenting everything. Screenshots of his text messages, photographs of gifts he'd given her, audio recordings of their private conversations captured through phone apps designed for students taking lecture notes. Each piece of evidence was uploaded to cloud storage accounts accessible from devices Khalil didn't know existed. Her tracking of Tariq's social media became obsessive archaeology, analyzing Instagram stories for clues about his emotional state, studying LinkedIn updates for changes in travel patterns, monitoring Twitter interactions for signs of other relationships. She created detailed spreadsheets tracking his moods, responses to her messages, and physical reactions during their increasingly frequent encounters. The spa at the Four Seasons Resort provided another venue during Khalil's expansion negotiations in Saudi Arabia. Yasmin booked couples massages under false names, using cash and fake identification purchased through Filipino domestic workers who maintained thriving black market for desperate expatriates. These afternoons of manufactured intimacy felt like normal relationship to her, while increasing Tariq's awareness that kindness had metastasized into something requiring careful management. Desert highway drives became confessional sessions where Yasmin revealed childhood traumas designed to trigger his protective instincts while simultaneously gathering information about his own vulnerabilities. She learned about his parents' divorce, his financial pressures, his fears about disappointing Khalil's expectations. Each revelation was weaponized later during arguments about commitment and future planning. "I've been thinking about Singapore," she mentioned during one midnight drive through empty dunes where city lights faded into ancient darkness. "Your investment firm has offices there. We could start fresh." "We're not starting anything anywhere," Tariq replied, but his voice carried exhaustion rather than conviction. "You're married to my best friend. I'm not destroying 20 years of friendship for something that should never have begun." Yasmin's performance as dutiful wife deteriorated with each passing week. Staff noticed her distraction during phone calls home, her lack of interest in charitable obligations, her tendency to disappear for hours without explanation. Khalil's questions about her improved mood during his absences were met with deflections that became increasingly transparent under scrutiny. The near discovery at Citywalk Shopping Center happened during one of Khalil's rare weekends in Dubai. Yasmin had arranged to meet Tariq for coffee, disguising it as coincidental encounter while browsing designer boutiques. They were deep in conversation about her growing demands for public acknowledgement when Khalil's business associate spotted them, later mentioning the intimate body language to someone who mentioned it to someone else until rumors reached ears that mattered. "People are talking," Tariq warned during their next secret meeting at the Mandarin Oriental Spa. "We need to be more careful, or better yet, we need to stop this completely." "Stop!" Yasmin's voice carried shock that genuine emotion could be discussed in business terms. "You can't just stop loving someone because it's inconvenient. I never said I loved you." The words landed like physical blows, revealing the gap between her interpretation of their relationship and his understanding of temporary arrangements requiring discretion. The ultimatum came during what Tariq intended as their final meeting, arranged in a neutral hotel suite where he planned to end things with dignity rather than allowing deterioration to continue. Yasmin arrived with luggage, having interpreted his request for private conversation as invitation to permanently escape her marriage. "I'll tell him everything unless you take me away from here," she announced, producing printed copies of their text exchanges and photographs of their intimate moments. "Tonight. We leave tonight, or I destroy both your lives tomorrow." Tariq's realization that kindness had created an obsession requiring professional intervention came too late to prevent consequences. "You don't understand what you're asking me to do. Khalil isn't just my friend, he's my business partner, my financial future, my family. I understand that you made me love you, and now you want to abandon me like garbage." Her tears were real, but strategy behind them was calculated. "I won't let you treat me like Khalil does." The secret recording had been running throughout their conversation, capturing his admissions of affection alongside criticisms of Khalil's controlling behavior. When she played it back, watching his face transform from confusion to horror, the last pretense of victim narrative disappeared. "Now you can't leave me," she explained with calm that chilled him more than her previous hysteria. "Because if you do, this goes to Khalil with a story about how you seduced his lonely wife and manipulated her into betraying her marriage. You planned this whole thing, didn't you?" Tariq's voice carried disbelief at his own blindness to manipulation disguised as vulnerability. "I plan to survive," Yasmin replied, mask finally dropping to reveal calculation behind every gesture of affection. "You helped me plan to live. The difference is you have choices, and I have none except the ones I create for myself." Outside the hotel windows, Dubai's construction cranes continued their eternal work, building monuments to ambition while shadows gathered around three people whose carefully constructed lives were about to collapse under the weight of desires that had grown too dangerous to contain. 5 months into marriage, Khalil's suspicions crystallized into methodical investigation. The private security firm he retained specialized in corporate espionage and matrimonial surveillance, their operatives trained to document infidelity with legal precision. Within 72 hours, they delivered photographic evidence that transformed his worst fears into documented reality. Hotel entrances, restaurant meetings, intimate conversations captured through telephoto lenses that revealed truths his own eyes had missed. The financial audit exposed patterns of deception hidden beneath legitimate expenses. Credit card charges at establishments where neither Yasmin nor Tariq had business being together. Spa treatments booked for two under false names. Gift purchases that coincided with their secret meetings. Each transaction painted pictures of systematic betrayal funded by his own accounts. Digital forensics proved more devastating than physical surveillance. Encrypted messaging apps, deleted photograph files, cloud storage accounts accessible through devices he hadn't known existed. The security specialists report detailed conversations that revealed not only the affair's progression but Yasmin's calculated documentation of evidence designed to protect herself while destroying others. In his private study, surrounded by mahogany shelves containing 3 generations of Al-Mansouri business records, Khalil spread the evidence across Persian rugs like a prosecutor preparing for trial. Photographs of intimate moments, financial records showing systematic deception, audio recordings of conversations where his name was mentioned with contempt rather than respect. Each piece of proof felt like surgical incision, revealing the cancer that had been growing beneath his carefully controlled life. "Father, I need to handle a family matter," he recorded into his phone's voice message system, words chosen carefully to convey seriousness without revealing specifics that might require tribal intervention. Traditional Emirati honor codes demanded blood payment for such betrayals, but business pragmatism suggested solutions that wouldn't generate international headlines or diplomatic complications. Yasmin's desperation manifested in increasingly erratic behavior as Tariq's complete withdrawal triggered psychological collapse. Her threats escalated from exposure to self-harm to carefully researched scenarios involving Khalil's accidental death. She studied his business ventures for vulnerabilities, his legal entanglements for pressure points, his daily routines for opportunities that might appear coincidental rather than premeditated. The pregnancy test gambit revealed how completely reality had separated from her strategic calculations. Arriving at Tariq's apartment with positive results fabricated through internet tutorials and borrowed urine samples, she presented ultimatums that assumed emotional leverage she no longer possessed. "Your child deserves a father who fights for their mother," she declared, waving plastic evidence of fictional pregnancy with theatrical desperation that convinced nobody, least of all herself. "There is no child," Tariq replied, recognizing manipulation that had become too obvious to ignore. "And there's no future for any of us if you continue down this path." His business meetings with Khalil transformed into psychological endurance tests where every conversation carried subtext that threatened to explode into open confrontation. Discussing renewable energy investments while knowing his best friend possessed audio recordings of him criticizing Khalil's treatment of women. Reviewing financial projections while wondering if security cameras had captured his most intimate betrayals. The test dinner at Khalil's mansion was masterfully orchestrated theater disguised as family gathering. Each question appeared conversational while serving as trap designed to catch them in contradictions. Where had Yasmin spent Tuesday afternoon? Which spa treatments had she found most relaxing? Had Tariq noticed changes in her mood during recent weeks? "Marriage requires adjustment," Khalil observed, watching their reactions with predatory attention to micro-expressions that revealed guilt. "Yasmin seems much happier lately. Perhaps she's finally discovering what makes Dubai feel like home." The evening's tension built through courses prepared by chefs who noticed the untouched food, the forced conversations, the way three people sat together while inhabiting completely separate realities. By dessert, all participants understood that performances were concluding and consequences were approaching. Yasmin's final gambit involved attempting to seduce Tariq in Khalil's home office while her husband reviewed contracts in the adjacent room. Her calculation that proximity would increase excitement proved catastrophically wrong when security footage captured the encounter for professional analysis that revealed premeditation rather than passion. Staff testimony provided the final pieces of evidence Khalil required. The housekeeper who had noticed extended conversations during business visits. The driver who had reported unusual destinations during supervised shopping trips. The security guard who had observed disabled cameras during strategic time periods. Each witness confirmed systematic deception that had been happening under his roof with his employees' complicity. Khalil's strategy for confrontation reflected both traditional honor concepts and modern business methodology. The private study provided soundproof environment where certain conversations could occur without generating documentation or witnesses. Security cameras were disabled to ensure privacy for discussions that might require solutions unavailable through legal channels. The summons arrived through separate text messages designed to prevent coordination between conspirators. Yasmin received urgent requests to discuss family planning decisions. Tariq was told that investment opportunities required immediate review. Both messages contained enough specificity to ensure compliance while avoiding details that might trigger suspicion. Yasmin arrived first, expecting private conversation about her behavior or perhaps Khalil's growing awareness of her unhappiness. The study's atmosphere felt different, heavier, more dangerous, but she attributed her nervousness to guilt rather than recognizing preparation for judgment. Tariq's entrance through study doors that locked audibly behind him confirmed what both had suspected but hoped to avoid. The trap was complete, evidence was assembled, and traditional justice was about to be administered by someone who understood that some betrayals could only be resolved through methods that business schools didn't teach. "Please, both of you, sit down," Khalil said, his voice carrying calm that promised violence rather than forgiveness. "We have much to discuss, and I want to ensure we have adequate time to reach understanding about the future." The Persian rugs beneath their feet had absorbed centuries of family conversations, business negotiations, and traditional ceremonies. Tonight, they would witness discussions that would determine whether three people left the room alive or whether honor would demand payments that could only be made in blood spilled across patterns woven by artisans who understood that some stains became permanent parts of the design. The mahogany desk became an altar for betrayal as Khalil methodically arranged evidence like a prosecutor preparing final arguments. Photographs spread across polished wood like playing cards revealing losing hands. Hotel receipts, spa bookings, credit card statements documenting 5 months of systematic deception. Audio recordings played through expensive speakers filled the soundproof study with voices that had whispered secrets they believed would remain hidden forever. 5 months, 17 meetings, 37 lies to my face, Khalil announced, his voice carrying the precision of an accountant calculating losses. Each piece of evidence professionally verified, each location confirmed through surveillance, each conversation recorded through equipment you didn't know existed. Yasmin's tears arrived on schedule, choreographed desperation designed to trigger masculine protective instincts that no longer functioned in her favor. "He made me feel things I couldn't control," she pleaded, gesturing toward Tariq while positioning herself as victim rather than architect. "I was lonely, isolated, vulnerable to manipulation from someone who understood my cultural displacement." "Khalil, I take full blame," Tariq interrupted, recognizing that Yasmin's performance was making their situation worse rather than better. She was trapped in an arrangement she never wanted. "I was weak, selfish, willing to betray 20 years of friendship for something that should never have happened. Our friendship is destroyed, but don't blame her for my failures." Khalil's calculated rage manifested as surgical precision rather than explosive fury. Traditional honor codes demanded blood payment for such betrayals, but business training required understanding all variables before implementing solutions. "You weren't just my wife and my friend," he explained, each word chosen for maximum psychological impact. "You were my property and my brother." The betrayal isn't just personal. It's territorial, financial, reputational. When Yasmin realized her victim narrative was failing, the mask dropped with startling completeness. "I never loved you, Khalil. I loved what you could give me until I found something real. Tariq showed me what it felt like to be chosen rather than purchased, desired rather than acquired like artwork for your collection." Her honesty sealed their fate more effectively than any lies could have managed. Tariq's desperate attempts at negotiation, offering to accept any punishment in exchange for her safety, only confirmed what Khalil already knew. The betrayal had created emotional bonds that couldn't be severed through reasonable discussion. "In my culture, there are debts that can only be paid in blood," Khalil announced, opening his desk drawer to reveal the Khanjar dagger that had defended Al-Mansouri honor for 3 generations. "You both stole from me. My trust, my honor, my future. Business has solutions for financial problems. Betrayal has only one remedy." The violence erupted with stunning speed. Khalil attacked Tariq as the primary betrayer, traditional blades seeking arteries that would ensure quick justice. Their struggle overturned furniture worth more than most annual salaries, crystal decanters becoming weapons, Persian rugs absorbing blood that would never wash clean. Yasmin faced her final choice: flee through doors she now realized were locked, or intervene in violence that might determine whether anyone survived the night. She grabbed the nearest weapon, a crystal award commemorating Khalil's business achievements, and brought it down on his skull with force driven by months of suppressed rage. The 3-way melee transformed the elegant study into a battlefield where expensive objects became instruments of destruction. No heroes emerged from the chaos, only desperate people fighting for survival while honor, love, and loyalty collapsed into primitive violence that recognized no civilized boundaries. Tariq, wounded but still conscious, managed to claim the dagger during a moment when Khalil was stunned by Yasmin's attack. The choice crystallized in seconds: kill his oldest friend or attempt escape that seemed impossible. Yasmin's interference, grabbing his arm while screaming demands for him to finish what he'd started, caused the fatal mistake that ended all negotiations permanently. "You destroyed everything for nothing?" Khalil whispered, blood spreading across Persian patterns that had witnessed centuries of family history, but never violence this intimate, this complete in its devastation. The dying conversation revealed final truths that money couldn't purchase and manipulation couldn't change. "Was any of it real?" Yasmin asked Tariq, her voice carrying genuine curiosity about emotions she had weaponized but never truly understood. "The worst parts were," he replied, understanding finally that his kindness had enabled obsession that destroyed 3 lives while creating nothing worth preserving. Khalil's last breath carried words that would haunt the investigation. "My father was right about foreign wives. Some investments cost more than money can ever repay." Morning light through bulletproof windows illuminated the scene that had opened this story. 3 bodies arranged by violence in positions that suggested intimacy transformed into death. Security personnel arriving to investigate disabled surveillance equipment found evidence of passion turned lethal. Dreams reduced to crime scene photographs. International incident brewing between governments who would struggle to explain how marriage had become murder. The final image crystallized everything that had been lost. Yasmin's Philippine passport photograph showing young woman filled with hope, now blood-stained beside Khalil's family portrait displaying traditional values that had demanded ultimate sacrifice. Tariq's business cards scattered among broken glass, professional achievements rendered meaningless by choices that prioritized desire over wisdom, survival over honor, love over loyalty.